Imagine sitting in your home on a quiet Thursday morning when suddenly a violent pounding at your door shatters the calm, and three men in uniforms you've never seen before demand to be let inside. What they didn't know is that this house wasn't unprotected. Inside lived an 80-year-old black grandfather, a veteran whose courage didn't fade with age, and they were seconds away from learning that some doors should never be forced open. Thursday mornings in the neighborhood usually carried the same gentle rhythm. Sprinklers ticking across lawns, dogs barking at delivery trucks, sunlight slipping through half-closed blinds. Caleb Rhodes had settled into that calm routine. He was at the kitchen counter sipping his strong Colombian coffee, AirPods in, laptop open, preparing for a Zoom meeting that was due in 15 minutes. Working from home felt like a blessing on mornings like this. Upstairs, Henry Lawson, Caleb's 80-year-old black grandfather, sat in his favorite recliner in the den. A weathered Western novel lay open across his lap, the pages soft from years of reading. Henry didn't speak often, but when he did, his words carried the steady authority of a man who had survived both war and life's storms. His silver beard framed a face that had seen more hardship than most could imagine, and yet he sat there, peaceful, enjoying his morning like any other. That peace ended with a knock that didn't sound like it belonged in a quiet suburb. Bang, bang, bang. It wasn't a polite ring of a doorbell. It was a hard, impatient pounding that made Caleb's hand freeze midair. His heart skipped as the sound echoed through the house. That wasn't a neighbor. That wasn't a delivery. That was someone demanding entry. Caleb placed his mug down, removed his AirPods, and approached the front door cautiously. He peered through the peephole, and his stomach tightened. Three men stood on the porch. All of them wore black cargo pants and dark tactical-style vests with HOA Enforcement printed boldly across the front in white. One held a clipboard. Another wore sunglasses even though the porch was shaded. All three stood like they were on duty, shoulders squared, jaws tight. Caleb unlocked the door but only cracked it open an inch. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man in front leaned his hand against the doorframe like he owned it. "Morn here for an urgent inspection on behalf of the HOA," he said, voice rehearsed and overly confident. "We'll need to come inside. Won't take long." Caleb frowned. "Emergency inspection? I've never heard of that." The man lifted a laminated badge, cheaply made, no seal, no signature. Everything about this felt wrong. Something deep inside Caleb whispered, "Do not let them in." The porch shifted into a silent standoff. The man with the badge didn't blink. "Your property has been flagged for non-compliance," he insisted, lifting the clipboard as if it carried the weight of law. "We're authorized to inspect for unauthorized changes. Open the door fully." Have you ever had someone show up at your door acting like they had authority over your home? What would you do if three men in uniforms tried to force their way in, claiming they had the right? Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. If you believe in protecting your home, your family, and your rights, then smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc. Because real courage isn't about power, it's about standing your ground. Caleb kept the door barely ajar, his fingertips tight around the edge. "Do you have any documentation from the actual board or a warrant? Because I've never heard of HOA inspectors entering homes." The clipboard angled toward him, but the paper looked odd. No stamps, no signatures, just bold paragraphs designed to sound official. Behind the leader, the other two men stayed stiff and silent, watching Caleb like security guards studying a suspect. Their presence alone sent a warning through his system. His instincts were clear now. This wasn't normal. "I'm going to need to speak with someone from—" He didn't finish. The lead man suddenly pushed forward, slipping his boot against the threshold, wedging the door open an extra inch. The shift in energy was instant. Caleb tried to push back, but the man leaned his shoulder in, and the door forced wider. All three stepped inside without permission. No yelling, no rush, just confidence, the kind of quiet intrusion that said they had done this before. Caleb stumbled back, breath catching. The warm, peaceful house he woke up in now felt invaded, cold, wrong. He opened his mouth to protest, but another sound cut through the air, a metallic click, sharp and unmistakable. Every head turned. At the top of the staircase stood Henry Lawson, framed by morning light pouring through the upstairs window. One hand rested on the railing, the other held a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun with the comfort of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be taken seriously. His posture wasn't shaky or confused. It was firm, controlled. A black grandfather who had seen real conflict and wasn't about to be bullied in his own home. "You fellas aren't HOA," Henry said, his voice steady enough to freeze the air. "And you're done here." The three men stopped mid-stride. The youngest twitched toward his belt. Maybe instinct, maybe panic. Henry didn't wait for interpretation. He racked the shotgun once and fired into the ceiling. Drywall burst like a grenade of dust. The house trembled. A ceiling fan shook violently above them. "I said out," Henry repeated. Louder this time, eyes locked on them. They finally understood. The blast changed everything. The ceiling debris drifted down like snow, and the three intruders who had strutted in with fake authority suddenly stood frozen, stripped of every ounce of confidence they'd walked in with. The one who had reached toward his belt slowly raised both hands, palms showing. The tallest avoided Henry's eyes completely, and the man in sunglasses swallowed hard, throat visibly tightening. Caleb snapped out of shock, his phone already in his hand. His voice trembled but stayed clear as he dialed. 911. "We have 3 men impersonating HOA inspection officers. They forced their way inside. My grandfather is armed and protecting us. We need police. Now." He didn't lower the phone even as the dispatcher spoke. His eyes never left the intruders. Henry didn't move from the stairs. He remained still, finger off the trigger, but ready. The shotgun angled downward just enough to show control without escalating the danger. The only sign of his age was the slight tremor in his left leg, but his stance held firm, the stance of a man who had spent a lifetime holding lines others tried to cross. Minutes passed like hours, until the distant sirens grew louder, slicing through the tension. The flashing red and blue lights washed over the walls as 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of the house. The intruders' shoulders sagged. The act was over. Caleb stepped back from the doorway as 2 officers approached tactically, hands near holsters, scanning the house with practiced caution. They didn't know what situation they were walking into. To them, it was an armed homeowner and 3 unknown men inside a residence. Caleb raised his hand slightly. 3 men inside, pretending to be HOA, forced entry. My grandfather still has the shotgun, but we're safe. The officers nodded and entered, clearing the living room with sharp precision. When they saw Henry at the top of the stairs, shotgun lowered but secure, one officer spoke calmly, "Sir, please place the weapon down and step back for us." Henry's eyes met his. There was no ego, no argument, just a slow nod of a man who knew the threat was over. He set the shotgun on a stair and came down carefully, gripping the railing as he descended with quiet dignity. The intruders were ordered to the floor, hands behind their backs. Zip ties were swapped out for steel cuffs. Searches revealed a civilian taser, plastic restraints, and forged paperwork. No IDs, no authorization. Their fake authority dissolved under real law. With the 3 men cuffed and seated against the wall, the living room felt different. Still tense, but no longer dangerous. Officer Daniel Reeves, the senior officer on scene, took command with a steady presence. He questioned Caleb first, listening closely as Caleb explained everything from the moment of the loud knocks to the forced entry and Henry's intervention. Henry answered his questions briefly, every response calm and precise, as if he were giving a debrief rather than a statement. The officers sifted through the men's belongings. No valid identification, no HOA connection, and none of the paperwork matched any legitimate HOA documents on file. What was found raised deeper concerns. Printed violation notices, fake badges, zip ties clearly intended for restraints, and a taser tucked in one man's belt. It was no misunderstanding. It was a pattern. As more details emerged, police confirmed what Henry and Caleb already sensed. The intruders were ex-private security contractors who had been dismissed months earlier for misconduct. Instead of moving on, they reinvented themselves, creating a fake compliance enforcement group. They bought vests online, printed their own IDs, and started roaming neighborhoods posing as HOA enforcers. Their targets were always the same: elderly residents, new homeowners, anyone less likely to challenge them. They relied on fear and false authority to access homes. By late afternoon, the Brookhaven Ridge Community Association board was contacted. Shocked, They issued a statement condemning the impersonators and clarifying that no emergency inspections existed. But neighbors still felt unsettled. These men had been operating for weeks, walking into homes because no one questioned the uniforms. It wasn't just a crime, it was a wake-up call. Caleb returned home that evening, exhausted. The house was quiet again, but the weight of the day lingered. He sat on the couch next to Henry and reviewed the doorbell camera footage. Every knock, every shove, every second Henry stood at the top of those stairs. He didn't upload it for fame. He shared it so people would recognize the danger of blind obedience to anyone wearing a vest and using the word authority. The clip spread quickly anyway. Neighbors called Henry a hero. To him, that word didn't mean much. He hadn't been looking for attention. He had been protecting his family like he had done his whole life. Sometimes real authority doesn't come from a badge or a vest. Sometimes it looks like an 80-year-old black grandfather standing his ground with nothing but courage and a shotgun. If you believe that no one has the right to intimidate a family in their own home, and that real courage means standing your ground even when you're outnumbered, then hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to Story Arc.